Should you allow your child to take creatine? Is it safe? Is it effective? What should you do? That's what we're gonna talk about today. Now, before we get into the weeds with creatine, I wanna make something very clear, and this is the most important point of the video. Regardless of anything that I say, and regardless of what anyone else says about creatine, you are the parent, and you should feel no guilt or no shame based on what you decide to do. So if you decide at the end of this video, there's no way I'm giving my kid creatine, cool. You're the parent and you get to decide. And for whatever it's worth, I had a very long career in powerlifting. I was very fortunate to do very well. I deadlifted 530 pounds, weighing 132 pounds. It was 4 times my body weight. My mom wouldn't let me take creatine growing up. When I was in high school, I begged and I pleaded. I said, Mom, please let me take creatine. And she was like, no, they're steroids. They're not actually steroids, but that's what she thought. And I'm sure that she would have liked to have been more educated, which is why I'm making this video, because I want to provide you with the education that you need to make the best decision for you and your family. No matter what happens, you're the parent, you get to decide. Having said that, I have 2 daughters. Now, they're very young. I have a 2.5-year-old and I have a 5-month-old. And before I explain what creatine is and the safety and all of that, I just want to tell you what I'm going to do based on the current research with my children. I'm not gonna give them creatine right now, it's just completely unnecessary. But let's say when my daughters are 12, 13, 14, 15, they're getting into athletics potentially, and they say, you know what, Dad, I wanna use creatine. I wanna tell you how I would respond to that. In that instance, I personally would be totally fine letting them take creatine. And again, I'm gonna go into the safety and efficacy and all of that later. For right now, just understand, I would be totally fine letting them take creatine, but I wouldn't just buy it for them and say, here you go. I would make them earn the privilege of taking creatine, because what many people, not just kids, adults too, many people think that creatine and all supplements are these magic pills that are gonna lead to incredible results just because you're taking them. That's not how it works. Supplements are supplemental, assuming you're already doing everything else right. If my daughters say, Dad, I really wanna take creatine, here's what I would say. First, you have to be consistent with strength training at least 3 times a week. Second, you have to be getting at least 8 hours of sleep every night. So you've got to be going to bed at a good time and waking up at a good time. You've got to be getting good grades in school. You've got to be putting good effort in school. You've got to be showing me that you're trying with your nutrition, eating a lot of fruits and vegetables and fiber and protein, staying hydrated. You've got to be respectful around the house to me and your mother. These are all things that would have to happen before I allow them to take creatine, because it's not a right, it's a privilege. And from the strength training and nutrition perspective, if they're not strength training consistently, if they're not eating well, if they're not getting enough sleep, then it's not gonna do what it needs to do, and they haven't earned that privilege of taking that supplement. As a parent, before I let my child take creatine, I'd wanna make sure they have all their ducks in a row and they're doing everything else right before they start taking that supplement. Having said all of that, let's talk about creatine's safety and effectiveness, and we're gonna start with safety because we're talking about your children, all right? Now, considering I would let my children take it, you could probably imagine that I think it's very safe. To start off, creatine is arguably the most researched supplement in the world, so the amount of data that we have behind it is huge. There is one caveat though. The amount of data that we have on it is mostly on short-term studies. We don't have much long-term. So while short-term it appears to be very, very safe, overwhelmingly safe, long-term we just don't know. And that's how science works. So I wanna leave this open to say we might see different results down the line, but as of right now, January 2025, it appears to be very safe, not only short-term, but long-term as well. What I will say though is this, I think it's a really good idea before you start taking any supplement, talk to your doctor, and also feel free to get a second opinion. It's important to have these open conversations about your health and your child's health, because you wanna make sure that there isn't gonna be any interactions with other medications or anything that you might be taking. Now, the one group of people who I would say do need to be very cautious with something like creatine are people who struggle with kidney issues. If you have pre-existing kidney issues, creatine could potentially put more strain on the kidneys, which might cause damage over the long term. There is conflicting research on this, and it depends on the individual, which is why I want you to talk to your doctor. But assuming your child is an otherwise healthy individual and they don't have any pre-existing kidney issues, I would feel very safe giving creatine to my child. Now, as for effectiveness, creatine is very effective, especially when it comes to increasing strength and power. And essentially, without going into the scientific weeds, it gives your body more energy. It allows your body to use more energy to create more force and more power, which is amazing, especially when we're talking about athletic performance and strength in the gym or strength in sports. So if your child is an athlete, it could really be a wonderful tool. But I do want to clarify, when I say it's very effective, it's not going to take your child from an average athlete to a world-class athlete. It's not how it works. It gives you a little bit of an advantage. just a little bit, teeny, 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 tiny, probably isn't enough to take you from JV to varsity. Like that's probably not what it's gonna do. It's probably gonna be just enough to improve your performance a little bit. And I think it's important to keep that in mind because while it does have benefit, I think the main benefit from a strength and performance perspective would be something that you see over a long period of time. If you start taking it, you might see a little bit of improvement here and there, but the compounding effect, sort of like with the stock market, is where you get the most benefit. So while you're not gonna see dramatic improvements in a month or 3 months or 6 months, I think over the long term of taking it, you would start to see those improvements that you might not have gotten otherwise. And that's where creatine really comes into play over the long term of taking it. And there are other benefits as well. One of the main ones as of late, people have been talking about the neuroprotective benefits of creatine and especially improving like brain performance and cognitive function. Now, ironically, this is generally better for people who are older, both men and women, but especially women who are worried about brain degeneration and cognitive health. It's effective for that, and we need a lot more research to see how effective, but for whatever it's worth, if you want to take creatine, go for it, by all means, not a problem at all. But if you're not reading books, or if you're not interacting with people in a group community in person, or if you're not trying to educate yourself, if you're not trying to get smarter and keep your brain active, again, creatine is just a supplement, and supplements are supplemental. And you'll get way more benefit from actually educating yourself and learning and reading and studying, interacting with people than you would just by taking this little white powder. So all of that said, if it were my children and they earned the privilege of taking creatine, I would have no problem giving it to them, assuming they didn't have a pre-existing kidney issue and their doctor said it was safe. That's totally fine with me. But you need to decide what is right for you and for your child. So if you decide they're not gonna have it, that's totally fine. That's up to you. If you decide you want to let them take it, that's totally fine. That's also up to you. I would just talk with their doctor and make sure everything is in order. With that being said, if you, the adult, the parent, need help with your own fat loss, with your own fitness, I have a free calorie calculator. This calculator is gonna tell you how many calories you need to eat in order to lose fat and to keep it off sustainably. It's also gonna tell you how much protein you can eat in order to lose fat and build muscle and strength and recover properly. So if you want my free calorie calculator, I'll put the link in the description and I'll send it directly to your inbox so you can know exactly how many calories and how much protein to lose fat sustainably and enjoyably. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you don't already. Have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you soon.